the Wuxi City Sports Park Stadium, venue for the Wuxi Classic snooker, the first major ranking event of the 2013-14 season. John Higgins, who started the season in some style, winning the opening European Tour event in Sofia just a couple of weeks ago, hasn't reproduced anything like that form thus far against Australia's Vinnie Calabrese, but he's managed to win frames 2 and 3 to edge in front. But that's a fine response from the Aussie at the start of the fourth. Very nicely struck red from distance. He will be frustrated though, the underdog. He's had good opportunities to at least be 2-1 in front, if not 3-0. And you've got to take them against a player of Higgins' class. Jimmy Robertson, 4-0 to the good against Graham Dott. What a streak he's on at the moment. So another big name could be on the cusp of biting the dust there. Ali Carter and Alfie Burden level at 1-1. Matthew Stevens has raced into a 3-0 lead over Lu Ning.
Yeah, he's got John in a little bit of trouble here unless he takes on this right and red, which is tough. I think he's looking to put the white to the top cushion. Got to be careful though. Well, he's playing the other one actually. I thought he was playing the right hand one. I was going to say be careful of the double kiss. Didn't play the pot. He's just looking to lay the white to the cushion.
Well, that was some exhibition shot. Even John saw the funny side of that one. He could play that another 1,000 times and it wouldn't happen. Now, can Higgins get through to this red? If he can, it's bad news for Calabrese. And how often we see a player prosper following an error. There you go, plenty of room.
Amazing, isn't it? Oh, they just found those gaps. Oh, the players do find those gaps. There's fractions all the time. It's like the green to the centre. Coming down for these reds then. Well, want to get the one off the black spot, of course, if you can get that end for the black again. But he looks a little bit straight on this red. Just wondering whether he might just punch through for the pink to the centre. Looks like he's screwing back. Well, this would help if the pink goes on to the black spot. We shall see. Well, looking at that shot, I think it does go on to the black spot. But our referee just checking it. John Higgins was over his shoulder there. Looking for a cannon here just to hold the white at this end. Well, I think he's on one, but he's a little bit closer to it than intended. He's got to hit this clean, doesn't want to push it. Well played. So easy to get a double hit on those.
One or two signs here, ominous ones for Calabrese, that Higgins is beginning to find his range. He was rather let off the hook by his young opponent in at least one of those frames that he won, if not both.
Seems to have settled into this new cue pretty quickly, Phil. He looks comfortable, doesn't he, with it? He must have been practicing with it at some stage before he started this campaign, of course.
Well, you made the point, Mike and Sophia, that the grooves of the ash are pointing away from him, when traditionally he's preferred the grooves to be pointing towards him. But he said, well, it certainly worked for me and Sophia. He couldn't have played much better there. Beat some top players to get back in the winner's enclosure. And remember, it was a disappointing season for Higgins.
Yeah, you just see the grain there. I mean, they're more pronounced on an ash cue than they are on a maple cue, as Vinnie sits in his chair once more. And he's had his chances, really. Could have put John Higgins under early pressure here, but missed that black in the second frame for 2-0.
Big season for the Higgins, this, I think, because he's now 38 years of age, and for the first time he was questioning whether his game was still there following his early exit at the Crucible to Mark Davis. Apart from his triumph at the Shanghai Masters last season against Judd Trump, it was a disappointing campaign for him, and I think he's resolved to really give it one last big push. He's got nothing to prove, of course. He's won everything that matters multiple times. But perhaps given a little bit of a nudge by the success of his contemporary Ronnie O'Sullivan in edging in front of him with 5 world titles, perhaps that was a bit of an incentive for Higgins to think, well, if you can still do it in your late 30s, why shouldn't I?
Yeah, the thing is as well, that's good competition, isn't it? It's healthy competition, and you know, it's like when Stephen Henge was slipping down a little bit. You know, there's a lot of people sort of wrote him off at their peril, and came back and won another 7th world title. And you don't. These players are too good. They really are very, very good indeed. He's got the enthusiasm back. And say, getting back to the new cue, he looks really comfortable. And we saw an interview with him last year about, you know, the feathers. It's called the feathers, actually, what they call the grain of the cue. So, but he settled very early with this new one, and he's looking very good.
New cue, new lease of life, perhaps. You just get the feeling he means business this season.
He's always had wonderful support, family support around him as well, hasn't he? His wife Denise and the kids, and unfortunately for him, he lost his father a couple of years ago. It's 3 years now, I think. That was a massive blow to him, but the mental strength that he showed that year was one of his best seasons ever. And this guy, when he puts it all together, is a tough cookie.
Well, no doubt that he's going to be leading Calabrese 3-1 at the mid-session interval. It's taken him a full 4 frames to really find his form, but he's found it now.
I think it was the second frame that you thought that might just set the pattern here, and it's working out that way. And once he comes back from that interval as well, he won't want to hang about, and he'll try and get this match out the way pretty quickly. Deshuat Poonjang awaiting. That could be an interesting one to watch, considering what went on at Sheffield. He had some fun there, didn't he?
Well, I think Mr. Poomjang will always be interesting to watch, whether or not he's potting balls. He's a character, okay. And let's not forget, he produced some very good snooker in beating Stephen Maguire. Huge shock in the first round.
It's a lovely shot to free up the black. Would have preferred to be on the black, but he'll have to take the brown. Solid frame here, though, from the 4 times world champion. Yes, I just wonder whether he'll be thinking about world title number 5, number 6. We've talked about Ronnie O'Sullivan possibly equaling Stephen Hendry's 7. He's still quite young enough to do that, you know.
I think it's a lot more feasible now than it would have been a couple of seasons ago. O'Sullivan has got his head together to such a degree now, under the tutelage of Steve Peters, the sports psychiatrist, that whereas it would have been a somewhat outlandish notion that he could catch Hendry just a couple of seasons back, now he's only one away from equaling Davis's tally of 6 at the Crucible. And the way he won the title in the spring, who would bet against him doing something similar 11 months hence?
Yeah, and that blue going in for John Higgins is his 531st century of his career. He's number 3 on the all-time list, behind Stephen Hendry and Ronnie O'Sullivan. So this has been a super break.
He was pretty ropey in the first 2 or 3 frames, but this is vintage Higgins, and what a clearance that was. The crowd thoroughly enjoying it. A break of 116. It's the mark of the man. He's shown his class just before the interval there with a magnificent century. So they're off for a 15-minute break. Rueful smile from Calabrese. He had his chances, but he trails 3-1 at the mid-session.